What's going on, good people? Welcome. Man Talk Monday. I am Derek, the Thought Engineer, here with my boy, comedian John Yogi. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. What it do?
Glad you added a few more dudes on there. So, right. So this is Man Talk Monday. It's an open forum. We talk about everything from politics, religion to relationships, the whole nine, but we do it from a man's perspective. The good thing is, we welcome comments, questions, everything from everybody, man, women, boy, girl, doesn't matter. We want you to be a part of the conversation. So you have a comment, you have a question, feel free to drop a comment. We can see your comments and we welcome them. So without further ado, tonight we're talking about go back or else reopening schools during a pandemic. It's a pretty hot issue right now, especially since school is coming. It's like right up on us. August? Yeah, we're in August already. Mm-hmm. So it's moving pretty fast. But the good thing about it tonight, it's just not me and Yogi talking. We got some subject matter experts that we want to bring in. So I want to go ahead and bring them in. Subject matter experts, we have Dr. Selena Smith, and joining us also is Miss Natalie Brown. She's an educator, she's a parent, so she's looking at this thing from both sides. And so, welcome, guys. We appreciate you guys for being on. How y'all doing tonight?
Good. Doing good. So glad to be here. Be able to inch in on the man talk.
Oh, yeah. Glad to have you guys. So, here we are. It is a few weeks left in August, and the school year is fastly approaching. And we're still in the middle of a pandemic.
Still.
But the powers that be are saying, you're going to go back to school. So tell me, what are your feelings, your personal feelings about this?
So my personal feelings are, I feel like it's such a hot topic, like you said, because everybody has a chip they want to throw in, right? Like there's the parent perspective of, I need to go to work. So what do I do with my kid? There's, the business perspective of, we need to open because honestly, schools equals money. Like, believe it or not, a lot of decisions made for schools is based on funding. And then you also have like my own teenagers, they want to go back, like being away, that social aspect, being away from their friends is like mentally draining for them. Like it affects their own mental health. They want to be, it's a social thing. Yours too, John? Affect yours too?
You said it's mentally draining for them?
Yeah, like, I mean, you know what it's like to be a teenager. Like, you didn't want to be at home with your parents, like like 5 months. Nobody wants that, right?
Nobody wants that.
And then as teachers, I think teachers are even split. Like some are ready to go back, and some because of underlying health conditions and family issues are scared to go back. And so I think like the best way to figure it out is to take all those emotions out and you look at data. It's what we do all the time in schools, teachers, schools, every decision we make, it is ingrained in us, in our teacher training, as you get on the job, every decision you make is based on data because there's no emotion tied to data. It is what it is. Yeah. And so I feel like as a community, there's too many like voices. We just need to look at the data. And until the data says it's safe for us to go back, then we should find alternative ways to educate our kids. It's not that we don't want to continue education. We still want to educate our kids. It just has to be in a different way.
So let me give you the data for people that don't know. Mm-hmm. Since for the last 2 weeks of school opening, 97,000 children have tested positive for COVID-19. So let them numbers sit with you.
See, John.
When you make the decision.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to look at when we look at even Dallas County or whatever county you're in. For us, we're still plateauing. So we're up here high and it's staying consistent. Like we haven't even started dropping yet. And so the numbers are way higher and way worse than when the decision was made in March to not come back. So how do we then flip and say, hey, like, yes, the cases are worse. In our own school district, we've had there have been several teachers and school staff who have passed away. Like, you don't hear about it, but we know in Dallas ISD people who have passed away and lost their lives to COVID. And that was when they were away from students and, we weren't even in school. So I just don't always understand why, if the numbers are worse and they're higher and the death rate has increased, when the decision was made for us not to go back in March and it's worse now, why all of a sudden, hey, it's okay for you to go back,
John.
One of the concerns that we had that I'm hearing is this affects even people that don't have children. Because if my children are going back to school and they get it and bring it home to me and I'm going to work, now I can give it to someone at work that's not exposed to kids. And they're really thinking like, oh my God. So either everybody needs to do everybody needs to do the same thing.
Exactly.
I think the problem is we got too many, like she said, we got too many people that trying to decide, well, I'm sending mine back. And think about this, because as you were talking, I got to think of this. Most of the people, I understand the impulse of, I got to get these kids out the house. They're eating up everything. The air conditioning is high. They got to go somewhere. I get it. Listen, I get it. I want my kids to go somewhere too. But I want them to go when it's healthy and safe so I can lock the door behind them so they won't come back. So we can't. So right? We have to do. I
agree.
We have to do. Go ahead.
And it's just when we look at the situation, like, I wish it's like people think like, oh, teachers are being selfish, right? Like, oh, they want an extra vacation. Like, no, teaching is a selfless job. Like, it is one of the most selfless jobs you could ever go into. Like, no one goes into teaching for money or for fame or for notoriety. Like, it is your passion. And it hurts teachers. Like, when you don't have your passion, like when you're not able to live out like that drive that gets you up every day, like educating kids for teachers, making a difference in kids' lives is why we are teachers. Like, it is what wakes us up in the morning, is what gives our life purpose. And so us not having that is difficult, but we also understand like teachers are willing to sacrifice their lives. They've been willing to sacrifice their lives for years. This isn't like, oh, we're scared. I mean, we've gone through active shooter drills. We protect your kid if there's a tornado. Like, we use our bodies as shield all across this country to protect kids. So the difference is we're willing to sacrifice ourselves, but we're not willing to sacrifice our students, and we're not willing to sacrifice our families in this pandemic. And to ask us to do so is just crazy to me, that those considerations are not thought about. When you go into Walmart at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, there's not 700 people in Walmart. Right. And what classroom or school is as big as Walmart is with all that open space? I mean, the comparisons people make about why we should go back to school because Walmart's open or, nurses are working. And I love nurses, but we're not healthcare workers. We weren't trained in the healthcare profession. So all these comparisons are just really, really unfair. And it's just trying to, I think, bully us into sacrificing our families and sacrificing hundreds of students who, like Dr. Smith and I, we serve a very vulnerable population. Like, our students and their families are the most at risk. They're the most affected by this pandemic. And to just say, send them back into school and in crowded hallways is just not caring about their futures. And as teachers, that's what we do. So we have to stand up for them because no one else is.
And I want to say something real quick. Okay. I think the misconception is that teachers get a break with virtual learning. And it's even harder to teach because now you have to differentiate so many ways. Like in a classroom, you still differentiate, but you have the kids right there. You have to do so much. You have to have so many platforms so that you can make sure you're reaching out to kids, and so many different resources that you have to try to figure out yourself. So you have to train yourself on how to use these platforms and then try to train the children virtually on how to use them. It's so much more work because you never put the computer down. So you're working 24/7 more than you are in the classroom. So it's not a vacation. And I hate when people say like teachers just want to be at home and on this vacation. And I was like, that is such a conception because it's not what's going on.
So let me do this. So we want you guys to be a part of the conversation as well. Absolutely. So first question, and we kind of talked about it, is why are they pushing so hard to get kids back in school? So we know you have feelings about this. Funding. We want to hear how you feel. And so drop a comment. We're definitely looking out for it. So I just want to put that out. Okay. So you kind of mentioned it. Go ahead, John.
Well, Dr. Smith said it's about funding, but I don't believe it's exclusively about funding. I believe that, when something comes out for the first time, it's really, really bad. and people are really, really afraid of it. But the longer it's out, the more insensitive to it we begin to be about it. And I just think that right now it's been out long enough. Now the people are like, listen, hey, either we gonna die or we ain't gonna die from it. It's been long enough. Something needs to happen.
Great point.
I understand that. But you got to think about the almighty dollar, and funding is what's keeping what's making them want to open the schools, because schools are not getting funded. If there's no kids sitting in the classrooms, then the schools are not receiving funding. And schools didn't receive funding last year for the months that we were out. And so now, if we don't go back, this is what they're saying now. If we don't go back, they're not going to fund schools.
All right.
So I think school leaders are put in a very difficult position, right? Like you have superintendents and school leaders, and we've seen it across here in North Texas. You know, Richardson ISD comes to mind, like Dr. Stone, like, you know, wanting to put teachers, you know, well-being at the forefront. But then you also have to understand school's a business. Like it is based off, it generates money, and school leaders cannot prolong school if it's going to cost them the dollars to run that school, because it takes funding to buy supplies, to pay the electricity bill, to pay teachers. So I think school leaders are put in a very difficult position between, how do I continue to pay the bills like all of us do? Like, how do we continue to, you know, afford all the things that go into running the school in a school district, and also have the, you know, the well-being of our teachers and students at the forefront? And it's difficult.
All right. So we have Samantha Fitzroy Brathwaite, who has, she said, yes, I agree. And I feel that like the parents are not looking at it from a teacher's perspective. We want to get back and do our jobs and support our children, but parents need to realize they should be their child's first teacher. And when they do come to school, the teachers are just building on what they already know.
That's true.
Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
Hold on. We ain't even finna get into that. You come right on back over here. Come back over here. We're not getting to that. Well, and what I was saying, my point is, it's not that I don't agree that it's all about funding, because I do agree. But I'm simply saying, to the person that doesn't know the school system, we have been doing it, and that's why we get so many mixed reviews from people. Well, mine going back, mine can't go, because I think right now it may be split close to 50-50. And I think the reason is that again, the longer that we are exposed to something, the less afraid of it we are. And I think COVID, man, it's funny because the numbers are going up, but I don't think we're afraid of it like we should.
Unless you have somebody close to you that's being affected by it. If you don't see it, the detriment that it's doing to people close to you, then you're desensitized to it.
You got a point. Because you remember when AIDS first came out, how people were so panicked by it. Mm-hmm. And today it's like getting a cold. And it's
no, it ain't either. It ain't.
As far as people's fear about it, people treat it like it's we got a pill for that.
If you touch them, you would get.
Yes, that's true.
Because it was like this, nobody knew anything, so they're just throwing out a whole bunch of stuff. And I think people still really don't know this virus enough to really even make decisions like this. But yet and still, they're in a rush for life to get back, because the people who are making these decisions don't necessarily have somebody in the midst of it where they're really concerned about it. And I think that's something that people need to consider.
Or they just know, like, they have access to healthcare and they have access to all of these things. They have access to being tested and getting tests back quickly. I mean, a lot of these people who are making decisions, they have the access. And so their fear, I think, is reduced because, you know, they're able to take care of themselves, their family. They can get a test. They can get a test back quickly. And that's just not the case for a majority of Americans. And it's not the case for a lot of urban public school families.
When I hear Miss Brown talk, she talks like she been wanting to get over here for a long time. She talk like, boy.
Calendar circle, John. Countdown.
She talk like, boy, when I get on there, I'm gonna tell them a thing or two, Jack. I'm gonna tell them. but again, I want to say this, and I think I've even heard that kids are less susceptible to it. It don't do to them what it do to adults. So
that's a false read you this down. So that's a false sentiment, right? That's what they were saying. First, it was kids don't get it. Then it was, they get it, but it's not affecting them the way it's affecting.
Yes.
And they're not able to transmit it. But 97,000 children have gotten it. So clearly that's false. And remember, it changes every day. Every day is something different. There's a new symptom out there, or there's a new way for it to be transmitted, or it's a new population that it affects more than, because at first, remember, everybody, it was the older people. Just older people are being affected by people with underlying conditions. Then the young people was out partying. Now all the younger people are getting it.
Look, then it said, it's mainly black people that's getting it.
Black people with high blood pressure.
Right.
You know, and then it was kids can't get it, but now 97,000 children have gotten it. So they don't know. There's too many unknowns. That's my thing. It's so many unknowns with this disease or with this virus for us to just be putting ourselves in harm's way. But the one thing that is known is that it's deadly. So that should be the one thing to say, okay, it's deadly, people. Hello, we're in the middle of a pandemic where people are dying, people are losing their lives. So why can't we find alternative ways?
It's almost as if every time they make a statement, Corona says, "Oh, really? I'm gonna show you a little something." That's what it seems like right now. But it's going in a bad way, and I hate to look at where we are in this pandemic, because here we are just months away from another election. You know, the bad thing about this country is you never understand people's motives. Mm-hmm. People do things, they make decisions, and you never understand their motives. And it's almost as if their motive isn't actually caring for people. As much as they try to seem like they're concerned about the students not learning, I think living outweighs learning a little bit.
I mean, this is, sorry, go ahead, John. You've been trying to get in. I'm sorry. You know, I got this person. You get to talk every Monday.
I do. You go ahead.
That's real.
You go ahead, Ms. Brown. You go ahead.
What I was going to say is, and then John's going to talk, but was that I think you're getting to like the root of why they're pushing so hard to get people back in school is because it is political. You know, like if we don't get kids back in school, then parents can't go to work. And then I can't say I have all these, you know, job numbers, and then the economy's doing bad and all of these other things. And so it's like, and I think part of it too, this is playing into a whole nother thing that we don't necessarily talk about a lot was, you know, I just saw Senator Ted Cruz, our own senator from the state of Texas, trying to push through or create a bill that's now going to be school choice in the sense of let's use public school dollars so that families can then take their kids to public schools private schools or to, you know, other schools, and we can use public school funds for that if teachers don't want to go back to work. So this is an issue that's playing into politics all around, and that's why they want to get you back in.
So thinking about what you just said, historically, programs like that have not played in the favor of blacks.
Exactly. Because you don't have the money to fill that gap, right? Right.
But when it comes to actually giving out the funds and the resources, they go to more affluent school districts where the poorer school districts, which typically are in low-income areas, they are always left out.
Yeah.
Therefore, creating a larger gap, not only in education, but in resources, in wealth, in the whole nine. And so it creates a bigger gap that already exists, which is the wealth gap, which it could lead to as well. So
on your turn.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that what am I gonna say?
And now you're not ready. I did a teacher move. I said, John, I'm gonna talk, and in a minute,
I was going to say that we don't do a good job of electing people or putting people in position over us that have a heart for the people or know what the people are actually going through. Because so many times, like we say now, the people that are making the rules are out of touch. It does me no good for them to be out of touch if they don't know the struggle, if they don't know what we actually go through. It's people that aren't rich and or high esteem, they don't really know what we go through, and it does us no good. We have to do better at electing people that can relate to us and what we're going through. We do terrible at that. We fail. I'm looking at the statistics right now, and they say we don't hire nobody that can relate to what.
You looking at the what statistics?
You know what? If I was running things, I'm talking about the Secretary of Education or anything. If you were a superintendent, anybody high up, you would not be able to get in that position without at least 2 years of being in classroom. Because unless
even sending your kids to public school, like how are you the Secretary of Public Education and your kids never went to public school?
Have no sense. Mm-hmm. And one thing, limited terms for Congress and senators, because when you get in that seat, your life changes. Mm-hmm. Even if you come from a poor neighborhood, you're not necessarily classified like that anymore. And the longer you stay in there, the longer you lose touch with the very people represented. So they shouldn't be in there that long either. All right, so I'm gonna get to the next question. So next question. Next question is, what's the biggest challenge with distance learning? Why aren't they looking at this as a viable option? What's the biggest challenge for distance learning?
I think there's a lot, right? So you have child supervision. You know, our younger kids, if their parents are at work, how do they stay at home and make sure that they're being attended to when it comes to learning? I also think we have a huge digital divide. So equity is a huge issue when it comes to our kids doing digital learning, whether or not they have access to not just a computer or a tablet, but also do they have high-speed internet to go with that to be able to actually do the digital learning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the biggest things I think that we found when we were just trying to hurry up and put this together on the fly, right? We were building a plane in midair last spring, that we found like we can give kids a tablet, we can give kids a laptop, but if we're not ensuring that they have a hotspot or high-speed internet, then those devices do them no good. And, what I've found is most kids who are in low-income areas, like they rely on a smartphone, their parents' smartphone to have access to the internet. So the things that we're assigning and the things that we're giving them, if it requires some sort of word processing or something that they actually have to type, and they're using a parent's smartphone, they're just not going to be successful in that type of assignment. And so I think there was a real gap in understanding what our students had access to and what we were trying to get them to accomplish in digital learning. And I think we've learned a lot about that over this spring and summer, that we're able to kind of create a better system. I know shout out to Dallas. Like every kid, pre-K through 12 is either getting an iPad or a Chromebook, and they're getting a backpack that's equipped with earbuds. All these things you don't think about: earbuds, headphones, a mouse, and also the most important is the hotspot. And so that's where school districts are going to have to start going. If they want a robust digital learning system, they're going to have to put the funds in creating, making sure students have access.
All right, let's get Monica's comment. Monica said, I was talking to my grandson about going back to school, and he told me that he has the option to go to the building or do virtual at home. I know that my daughter is one who teaches at home, but my grandson states that it's harder for him to learn doing virtual and that he'll be going back to the classroom.
And I think Monica brings up a good point. What I was talking about was we didn't have a really robust, good system to teach our kids digitally. We just didn't. We didn't understand what apps to use or what processes. And teachers were trying to be IT developers, curriculum writers, IT help for parents. All in a few weeks, we were learning all these different roles, trying to manage kids' passwords, all these things. And so I think what we have learned from March and April and May and over the summer is we have to create a better system that is more engaging for our students. And I think at this time, you'll see a vast difference in what digital learning looks like for students than it was last spring. Because we had no concept. We were trying to figure out things ourselves. How do we flip our curriculum to what platform? And so we've done a lot. Teachers have done a lot while we've been on vacation, figuring out what would best meet the needs of our students in a new digital learning environment. I don't think digital learning is going away.
Let me say this. I think I remember the quote. Somebody says, "If you don't evolve, you will dissolve." And I think education is going through an evolution right now.
Yeah,
Until we get people who are more in touch with technology, more in touch, get them actually calling the shots, not consulting, but making decisions on the education, then you just got fat cats that are sitting that need to be removed so that new minds can come in. Because actually, I think it's an opportunity to break away from traditional education where the standards that typically held groups of people. This is an opportunity to break those things, remove people in another direction where everybody gets equitable education. Let me say this before. I think right now, because you brought up a good point, that depending on where people are, computers are no longer a luxury. They're utility now. So maybe social programs could include computers in the home. We have welfare. Why don't welfare include a computer or something? Because it's not a luxury anymore. Now it's needed. But here's where community is very much highlighted. Because if you have people in your community who need stuff and they can't get it, where are your social groups? Where are your churches? Who have touch with people? What are you doing to try to help these people in this situation?
Well, and that's what I was going to say as well. I think it's time. I think not only like you said, trying to build an airplane while it's in the air, but I think it would be robust.
Man, I'm being an awesome teacher to you, John. I'm giving you think time. I taught you a new vocabulary word. Like, you come and roll in my class. I'll have you back.
So I think, I mean this. Everybody needs to adjust. Would it be fair to say that parents have gotten the pass on this education thing for the most part? Most of us have kind of been on autopilot. I think it's fair to say now that it's going to require more from us, as well as the parents, the students, from everybody. Everybody's got to do a little more. And I think nobody wants that adjustment. Everybody wants things to go back to being the way they were, and they're not going back to the way they were. So parents, kids, I know my youngest son really needed that one-on-one. Well, you're not going to be able to get it. So an adjustment has to be made to where we have to spend more time with him. So when the teacher does get him, he's where he needs to be. He's understanding better. I think for the most part, it's too easy for me to say I got to send my kids back because I don't want to have to do anything else. I don't want. I'm tired. I had to do it for 3 months. I'm about to lose my mind. That's called parenting. That's called parenting. So that's my.
And then, like, I think Monica said, like, her grandson said he doesn't learn well virtually. But then you got to think about, there are some students who in the classroom don't learn well because they need that one-on-one time, and they're not used to being in a large group setting. And so kids don't necessarily learn the same way anyway. And so I think the misconception is that if they go back to school, it's going to be better, but they're expecting it to be like it was before. It's not going to be.
Exactly.
Our is gone. And so even if they are the kids who are able to work better at school because of like small group instruction, that's going to be gone away because there's no small group instruction now. Everything is, you have to be 6 feet apart, or you have to do your own thing with your own supplies. And there's no sense of like community engagement that's going to be going on in the classroom. And so how do you know that even though your child says they learn better at school, how do you know it's going to be that same learning that they were getting when they go back? It's going to be something totally different. There's going to be people with shields and masks on. That's going to be traumatizing in and of itself. And distracting. You know, they're going to be able to learn that way.
I went to my job and saw the way they had changed things, and it was spooky. I was like, I don't want to be in here. They got the arrows down everywhere. And again,
yeah,
I don't think people understand this thing has really changed. And parents, parents, like Monica said, she said my grandson feels like he works better. And I'm gonna say this. Yes, I understand that, but it's gonna take more of the community of everybody being in it to make sure that he gets everything, and not just the schools.
Yes.
We have to spend more time at home doing things with our kids. You know what's funny? Why do we have to be made to do it? because let the truth be told, we should have always been doing this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
A pandemic had to come in order for us to appreciate our teachers and say, please, y'all, somebody give them some more money.
Right.
Serious, man. Serious.
And I think it also highlighted like just how many services the school does provide for the community. You know, like when you think about like, you know, before school care, you know, during school, the feeding the kids, giving them food to take home. I mean, and even during this pandemic, school districts still stepped up and said, you know what, like we'll still feed these kids, like come get food. But it's like you don't realize all the services the school provided for the community until it was closed. And whether it was, you know, enrichment activities after school, whether it was the things that teachers volunteered to engage students in different clubs and stuff that students had interest in. I mean, and I get it. That's why people are like, let's open back up school, because you do realize the huge void that it filled in communities. But it also says like at some point, like the community, like we have to start building that back up in our community in cases like this, because it's just, you know, schools aren't here right now. And so it just highlights like really how much the school did for the students that live there and the surrounding community.
What if, and this just I just hit me, what if school districts partnered with like gaming companies, especially like online gaming, like what's that? I always say it wrong. Fortnite. What if kids could actually earn either some of those things that they usually buy on there, or earn screen time or something with a game system based on how much screen time they've done with their school? Like you can log everything, you can track everything. What if they could track it, and based on the time that they spend doing their work, you know, on the computer, it earns them something when they go and actually play a game? Just an idea that's hit my head.
And I think that's why perspective is so important. You know, it's like this could be an opportunity to just like think about, I don't know, there's just so much that could come from it. Like, yeah, at the beginning it's like, oh, like,
yeah,
I don't want to do it. But you just never know what can come from these things. I mean, when we think about the possibility to literally reach every student, to make sure that every student has access to basic human things they need, like internet. I mean, the other day I was reading an article and it said the United Nations claimed that access to internet was a human right at this point in our society. And that was like 3 years ago, like in 2016. Like it wasn't a luxury anymore. Like every human should have access to the internet. It's a basic human right at this point because of the way our society is organized. And so when we think of the opportunities to give that to our children because of this pandemic, and we look at the opportunities that it could create, like you said, all these doors it could open, like we just have to harness this moment and then try to carve this like great new thing that will benefit the majority of people in our community.
I told you she was cold, John.
John he got some on his face. He want to say
Let me tell you about my colleague, Natalie Brown. I told you before that she is cold-blooded. I told you wasn't ready.
Who ain't ready? Oh, I'm ready.
That girl. You ain't ready. I'm trying to tell you.
Go ahead. So my thought is, if they say that if the internet and all that is a human, everybody should have it. Basically, is anybody going to talk to the people that give out the internet to make sure that everybody can have it and make it where it's affordable for everybody? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, AT&T don't care nothing about human rights. AT&T wants theirs. They don't care nothing about what you talk about. Well, everybody should have it. They want their money. If they don't have it 2 days later, they're gonna cut you off.
You're exactly right. And we saw companies, like when the pandemic first hit, there were some companies who stepped up and offered families 3 months free of internet. And there were some companies that were like, no, I need my money on the 15th, you know? So that's where we come in. Like, how do we as a collective body start saying like, that's not okay? And the power that we have collectively to put pressure on companies to say like, we expect these things for our community, either at a decent price or prorate it for, you know, based on your income. Like we do that for housing, we do that for all other things. So, you know, at some point this has to trickle down to the other things that our community needs to make sure that everyone really does have an even playing field when it comes to education.
But I think that's the misconception. We think that they're going off the premise that everybody needs equal access. I don't think that's right. What's going on. I think if racism is real, I mean, division in this country is real. So when you look at ways to get advantages, especially systematic, that's what you play on. Mm-hmm. It ain't about that guy getting beat up in the street by the police. It's about who's making laws that are pushing the needle that creates a greater gap, a greater distance between the have and the have-nots.
Right. And that's what we mean when we say systemic oppression. Like, it's not just like this one incident where, oh, I'm being treated differently by police. It's in every aspect of our life. Groups of people, whether it's because of their race or their socioeconomic class, are oppressed or kept from having opportunities because of those certain factors. And we see it. It's in education. It's in, going to college. It's in access to internet. It's in the quality of our food. It's in, all these other things that just we don't think about, but the pandemic has highlighted, it's like brought it up. It's always been there, but it's just because we see the huge gap in healthcare when it came to the pandemic, the people it really was affecting because of whatever, the jobs that they had and all those other things, like it just brought it to the forefront.
But why do you talked about systemic oppression, but why do we just put up with that? Why is there better food on the north side than in the inner city? Why do we just put up? Why are we okay with just having them throw it?
People are not educated enough to know that they can use the power of their voice to make those changes. Because you got to think about it. Like the northern schools, people in Plano, those kids were getting computers. Anyway, just every student get a computer, every student, whatever.
Well, even parts of Dallas are different,
In the same school district, students were getting computers. Everybody in the school getting the same computers. And then other schools in the same district, whereas everybody's not getting a computer. Why is it that a pandemic had to say, okay, now everybody needs computers? We need companies to jump on to give school districts computers or laptops for every student to have. That should have been something that was given anyway. Just because of the change in times, all these kids need access to computers.
Well, but if we could come together as a community and say, listen, AT&T, or whoever the cable companies are, whoever computer companies are, say, we're not spending any more money, X, Y, and Z, until you start doing this kind of thing right here. Because if you want to affect change, go in somebody's pocket.
Yep.
Because we talk about the funding, but there's things that we can do to make our area better. Mm-hmm. And we have to start demanding better from the people that are servicing us. Because listen, hey, if you don't want my money, somebody else will surely get it. Because believe me, and I hate to say AT&T, but anybody who's saying that they won't do like we asked them to do, well, okay, no problem. Everybody pull their money from there and let's go over here because they will do.
Right.
And important to that is that it starts local. We often think change at the top, like everyone vote in the presidential election, but everything that impacts people on their day-to-day basis is decided at the city and local level. And so we have to start changing our mindset too. It's not just about every 4 years, the person who's in power. It is really like, who are we electing to represent us in our community? And if they're not servicing us, then, we have to pay just as much attention to those elections as we do to a presidential one, because they actually impact our lives on much greater scale.
Probably even more.
Right.
Although this is the United States, the state is an individual entity. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't understand and you think the federal government is controlling everything, you're missing the point. That's not how it rolls. Each state kind of calls the shots for himself, and the federal government that kind of quarterbacks. So local voting is very important. So we need to get people to really focus on that as a community. When you talk about community, how strong do you think our communities are to really combat the inequalities in education? You say parents need to step in, communities need to step in. What's the likelihood that you think it would actually happen?
Because in order to do that, sacrifice has to be made. Somebody's going to have to sacrifice in order to make a statement. And who's going to be willing to do that? Are they going to sacrifice not having internet to make a statement? Are they going to sacrifice not, using different companies to be able to make the statement?
But I think that's why the role of the teacher is so important. Because, and Dr. Smith can talk about this, like, I think our role is even greater in the areas that we serve, because lots of times our families aren't necessarily educated about what they can do to create change. And our students definitely don't have a pathway to necessarily voice their opinions in such a way that will create change. So, and I think that just goes back to really how important teachers are, because we're their advocate. Like, we advocate for our students and our families in that community. You know, when we see that, hey, our students should be getting these things, we're the ones that raise those concerns. And, you know, we've done that when it's come to food. We've done that recently when it's come to digital learning, because we realize, like, you want us to do something that our students don't have access to. And so you see teachers really filling in that gap to advocate for the communities they serve, to try to create change, to try to say, hey, like, our students deserve, you know, all these other things that other suburban school districts are getting. And so there is power in that. Teachers need to understand that they have a really big role in that. They can create change for their communities, even if their students and their families, especially a lot of families we serve, may be undocumented. And so their willingness to be able to come out and speak about things is probably hindered. And so we are in that place to be able to speak for our students and families if they are unable to. And I think more teachers should definitely take on that role.
But wouldn't that be the role of the PTA leader? It's like
you have a PTA.
Yeah, we don't have a PTA.
We don't. That's what I'm saying. Like, people who think like schools have all these resources and they have these parent groups, it's just not the way school is anymore. And teachers are filling all those roles. We're fundraising. We're lots of times we're definitely donating from our own pocket, but we're the ones trying to create those fundraisers. We're the ones trying to create those community relationships. We're the ones going to the stores and Walmart and asking for donations. Teachers are serving that role, and they're doing it after hours, obviously.
And their own families. Let me tell you about this teacher right here, Miss Natalie Brown. Every year, she gets a company to come to her classroom to donate Christmas presents. So they have Christmas morning. Every year in her classroom, she has the fireplace going, the virtual fireplace.
Virtual.
And they have presents donated. Each child has presents, like as if it was Christmas morning at their home. They have multiple presents from a wish list that they wrote about, and they open presents like it's Christmas morning. She creates that Christmas morning in her classroom, something that's not necessarily done at their homes. And that's out of her advocating for her kids, and what's not given is given by the teachers. If the companies are not being able to fund it, then the teachers put their own money and they create this. But now we're in the midst of a pandemic, so they're doing extra stuff and still having to take care of their own children.
So let me say this, parents, you got to earn the right to complain from this point on. If you're in an area, if there's no PTA, don't complain. If you're not a part of the PTA, we don't want to hear from you. You have no right to complain if you are not participating in your kids' education as a parent. You have to earn that right. Let me just say that right there, because it's serious. It's a serious issue because everybody is trying to pass the buck on these kids. The kids are just hanging. And then you got their advocates who are here because these men and women are coming out of their own pockets to provide clothes, shoes, toiletries. And let's not even get to the emotional support, the counseling, and all this they do. And now you say you don't do enough for them. You need to go back and teach our kids, really.
And you should give your life for them, as if we haven't given enough. So now we give our money, we give our time, we give our mental capacity to your kids, and now we're supposed to give our life because you don't want to parent them. I'm just saying.
Now, we didn't say we didn't want to parent them.
Because I'm sorry, you don't want to teach them.
I mean, as an own parent,
I'm saying forever. Just while the world is crazy, right. There's a pandemic going on.
I get it. Like, people need to go to work. You know, I have a 4-year-old all the way to a 16-year-old. So I get it. You know, when you have little kids, I can easily leave my 16 and my 14-year-old at home. You know, but my 8-year-old and 4-year-old, they can't stay home by themselves. So I understand that it's inconvenient, and I understand it definitely puts a stressor on parents, because if you're trying to go make ends meet, you know, we have a small business. And so I definitely know what it's like if your small business is not open, or if it is open and customers aren't coming. Like, there are definitely financial stressors. It's not to say that this isn't easy or that it is easy for people. Like, it's just, we're not going to go to school, so take care of it. Like, we are very much aware of the extra stress it puts on families, but we also want to make sure that your kids are able to grow up and live out their dreams and, you know, make it to adulthood and be able to have the job that they want. Like, we're looking at the bigger picture, and we know it's a sacrifice right now. No, that's not lost on anybody. but we're looking at their future. And that's what teachers do. Like everything we do in this moment, we are in the mindset and mindful of who that student is going to become in the future.
Absolutely.
So what do you think needs to happen now? I mean, you got so many different opinions, so many people pulling in different ways. How do we resolve this thing?
Well, I think we need to have the people that know that are genuinely affected by what's going on. I think they need to speak. I think we need to be listening to them, because I have an opinion like most parents do, but we really don't know. We're going by secondhand or thirdhand information that we're getting. I think the teachers or the administration or somebody needs to say, "Hey, this is what's going on, and we don't think this or we think that." But first, they need to come together to get one-sided answer. I think that's the problem. We get too many different answers from everybody. We need everybody on the same page, and it'll make it easier for us. Because again, we will adjust to what we need to do, whether we want to or not. We'll adjust to do whatever, and that's one thing I've noticed. Parents will complain about it and everything, but for the most part, people will adjust to do what needs to be done. We just need to know what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
If you give us a choice, of course we're gonna say, nah, y'all go on with that, go on with them. If you give us a choice, so we can't have a choice. You have to tell us what we need to do. So what
you do know is that it's deadly. And
I know that.
That should be like, my child could die. Like they may not, but they could. And the fact that they could die, are you willing to say there's going to be an academic gap in my child's life if they don't go back into the building, if they stay here? Yes, there's going to be a gap. Absolutely, there's going to be a gap. But as teachers, we're professionals, and that's what we're trained for. We're trained to intervene when there's a gap. There's a gap anyway, right? And so we're trained to intervene when there's a gap. But we cannot fill gaps of dead children. Dead teachers can't fill gaps. And so if you know that it's deadly, why would you put your children in harm's way? Because the minute that something happens to your child or they die, they're going to be trying to sue the district. Oh, you let my child come back into the school building.
You know,
and my child tried to contract this virus. Well, you were also saying, why are you not taking my child back? I have to go to work. It's sacrifices that have to be made. And my thing is sacrificing the fact that your child has to be home with you or be home in general by themselves, not by themselves, but other alternate arrangements have to be made for your child. Sacrificing that just while we get through this pandemic is worth it, I think, to save your child's life and to save the life of the teachers who are sacrificing their time and their money and their emotional space anyway for your children.
Well,
right.
Yeah, before let me say this right quick. But for the most part, Selena, Dr. Smith, for the most part, the jobs are allowing people to stay at home with their kids if they need to. They're giving them the choice. So it's not on the people that very few people can't stay at home. You know what I'm saying? But if you tell them they can go back, I may send them back. But very few people can't stay at home with their kids.
I miss going to work. I miss Brown. I miss seeing my work people, my kids, the kids at the school. We miss those kids. But I'd rather miss them for right now and be able to see them later than to hear, oh, we came back and I saw them for a day and then they caught Corona and the school had to shut down anyway and then they died.
Yeah.
That's the thing. There's going to be, even if we go back, there's still going to be educational gaps because we've seen the schools that have opened face-to-face. Like how many of those schools that open face-to-face have now had an explosion of cases and have had to go to online learning or shut down? And so if we go back and I have to quarantine or we've been exposed, it's going to be shut down anyway. So those gaps are going to continue.
It's going to be red light, green light with the school all year long.
Which is why I think we just need to create a robust digital learning system. Because if that happens, we know that that's how we're going to have to fill gaps.
Yesterday about this is what we think that the school should do, right? Even if we open up. So say, because our district hasn't decided yet whether or not we're going back. Now the kids have an option of either doing virtual learning or doing face-to-face in the building. And so even if we do start going back, right? If we
lunch at school still.
Lunch at school.
Yes, in the classroom. with the teachers. So no new.
Okay.
Anyway, I digress. So if we go back, so say we go back for a week, for a day, if we go back and get these children to where they are so ingrained virtually in the, so they can't do community type work anyway. So we can't do like the engagement lessons that we did before, right? So if everyone is on their own device and they're submitting assignments through the Google Classroom or whatever virtual platform they do, if we do everything in the classroom virtually, to where if we have to close, it's just they just pick up where they left off. They're just now at home, but the curriculum is still the same. The work is still the same. It can be either asynchronous or synchronous, but just getting it to where we have like a streamlined virtual learning atmosphere for the kids in the school building. And then once we have to close or quarantine, it can just go straight to being at home. Then you used to it.
Well, because y'all know they're gonna have. Y'all know if y'all were gamblers, y'all would say they're gonna have to close down if they open up. So
we have one hallway in our school.
One for 700 kids.
700 kids. One.
And that's the thing, like
feet apart.
Parents cannot rely. That's what I was telling my kids, like because my kids generally are low risk, and I think that's what you have to also assess. Like, what is the risk level for your kid and their health and for your family? That's another thing you have to look at. Not everyone has the same family dynamic or underlying conditions. So look at the health risk and really what the risk is to your kids. And my kids are generally low. I mean, they are low risk. But so if I send them back, you have to train your kids. Like, do not rely on one teacher or one administrator to supervise social distancing for hundreds of kids. Like you have to train your kids. They can take care of themselves. They know what you expect. They know to wear their mask. They know to social distance. Like you can't just put it on the school system to try to keep kids apart. Like we have to start letting our kids know that now.
But do kids really do that though? Kids want to be kids.
I know.
They don't want to have to worry about social distancing. They want to be kids. I mean, because we tell our kids all the time, mask, get your mask, get your mask. Mm-hmm. And every time they go out the door, as much as we tell them, we got to tell them again. Hey, we're going over here. That kids want to be kids, and you can't stop that.
And at our campus, kids are supposed to wear uniforms, but some days I don't feel like wearing uniforms, so they'll just show up to school without their uniform on. And we have to call parents and say, so they're supposed to have their uniform on. And they're like, oh, well, I didn't wash it, so. But we expect them to wear these masks and bring their own mask every day.
Every day.
Uniforms, but we expect them to wash the mask every day and keep their own mask on.
Well, I think that's why the school is going to give them a facial that stays at school, because at least if they don't
coming in the building,
the mask,
But they don't want to give schools the funding,
exactly.
the extra work that needs to happen to keep, even if they keep stuff at school. Who's going to do all the cleaning? Mm-hmm. You got to bring special products, either special equipment to even do all this. By the time they show back up the next day, now you're taking time away from the school day because now you got to distribute these things out again as they come in. You created a whole new process that adds more time. And it's just take the money out of those prisons and put them back in the schools. Maybe we can do something.
And that's what we've seen at our own school is like, even, with our custodial staff, like they're just adding more duties. They're not adding more people to help with the duties. They're just giving them more days to work, the same amount of pay, and just more duties. And so it's like, that's another thing. Like, when does the community step up and say, fund our schools correctly so that we can provide the most safe and secure environment for our students?
All right, let me get Sophia. Sophia said they depend on us for everything prior to. I created sessions to train my students to review what to do and what not to do. So she created a whole thing just for her students before they actually go back to train them on the behaviors when they actually go back. That's great.
Go to the next one. Go to the next thing she said. Oh,
she said these schools have the money. Dallas had $6 million left from last year. Wow. But let me say this, because the industry I work in is air conditioning equipment. And I know for us, when we make the equipment and we help set up systems, schools require particular attention because you got to move so much air through the room. So as kids cough, sneeze, talk, any contaminants gets taken out of the room. Well, in order to keep up with something like this, you need to increase your system to be able to do it. So you need to bring in better air conditioning equipment just to kind of help keep the air better in a classroom environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not willing to invest. So that $6 million is going somewhere. They're not invested in stuff like this that could actually help curb the damage that could be done.
Yeah, but we ask questions. We say, well, when is the community going to get involved? Have we put the demand on the community to do it, though? I think it's one thing. I think it's easy to kind of say what everybody needs to do when there's no demand, though. You have to put the demand on the churches and the churches in the community. Dallas is church rich.
Mm-hmm.
It's 6 churches on every corner. And it's some really prominent churches on these corners. We got to put the demand on the community to be better and do better. But if no demand, if the school system never says, hey guys, we need help, everybody gonna think you good.
Right.
I thought y'all was good. I don't even know how I'm gonna sleep tonight with all this bad news I just heard. I think I'm gonna tough it out, but it's gonna be tough for me because I'm like, wow, I had no idea. I think most people are probably thinking that.
You're probably right. I think it reminded me, we had this conversation last night, Dr. Smith and I. We were talking about aligning expectations. And lots of times, you're probably right. Like expectations from both sides aren't always communicated. So it's like, where do we find the commonalities to really coalesce and advocate around? And so that's probably one of them. So hopefully this will get us all on the same page.
I think from like a parent's perspective, I think the misconception is that the school has all of this money, and they probably do, but not to where it's given to us. So a lot of our kids, they show up to school with no school supplies because it's like, your teachers will buy it, and we will. But when we do that, it's not the school buying their supplies. Us as teachers go into our own pockets, and we have between 22 and 24 students each. And so we go into our pockets, and I would say maybe 3 kids in a classroom will bring school supplies. And so for the other ones, we have to figure out how we're going to get them supplies. But the parents are like, the school has it. They're not going to let you go without a pencil. They're not going to let you go without paper. And we do, but we go into our own pockets to provide that. And
oftentimes the school is the teacher. We're the ones, we're the ones buying everything. Like we really are. We're the ones, if your kid doesn't come with a pencil, we're the ones who buy the pencils. If your kid doesn't come with a folder, we're the ones who get the folder. We're filling in. We've been filling in that gap for a long, long, long time.
And not just school needs. We buy shoes. We have a shoe closet. We buy shoes. Pay for their shoes. Clothes.
Okay, guys. Okay, I got my violin out. I got it out. I got my violin out.
Play it loud. Play it. One more time. Get it going.
I got it out. But I'm simply saying, so if we wanted to stop, guys, we got to get more people involved in it, though. If you guys isolate everybody else from what y'all are doing, y'all will continue to have those same problems. But just with this,
open application. Anyone who wants to help partner with us to solve these problems, you are always welcome. Open invitation. So, John, I want to see you. I want to see.
Whoa! I ain't saying me.
I'm gonna give you a list of things that you can do to help bridge this gap. And I know that you're so willing because you said you wanted to know. So now you know.
No. I just want to know.
John, when you know better,
you do better.
Okay.
All right, so we have our final 2 minutes, so we want to just give everybody a chance to make a plea to either school district, make a plea to the community, or whoever you feel needs to kind of be shaken to say, hey, pay attention. So we'll start with Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown.
I would just say, no, there's no easy answer, but I think if all of us, all sides are willing to compromise, we'll come up with a good solution that benefits just our public community as a whole. But it's not going to be easy for any one entity, any one person. It's going to take all of us having to compromise something.
And I'll pick it back off her, like she said, there's no easy answer. But I will say, if we just all just hunker down right now, it's going to be uncomfortable. If we allow ourselves to just be uncomfortable for a little while, I think that in the end, it will pay off. We'll still be allowed to appreciate the things that these great teachers do for these students. And then we'll be able to close the gaps in. So I just say, like, it'll get better later. But
this too shall pass.
This too shall pass. I really believe that.
I'm going to say 4 words. Dead teachers, dead kids. I ain't for that.
I support that.
I ain't for that. I ain't for let them stay at home. I mean, I'm not for that at all. If there's even a chance, I'm not for that.
I think either you at home or at the school, you're going to get the best out of your students, teachers anyway, because that's just what we do. We give our absolute best. And so virtually we'll give our best and we'll be allowed to do it.
All right. It's so much here right now. So much is being highlighted right now. But I'll say this. The pandemic has leveled the playing field for everybody. And it's the people in the communities who can quickly immobilize who's going to benefit from this time. Everything that everybody's been complaining about, the disparities, it's been leveled, so you have opportunity now. They say Chinese people have no word for crisis. When they hear crisis, they hear opportunity. So this is a great opportunity for us, especially communities that have been disadvantaged. This is a great opportunity, but what's the strength of our community? We say Black Lives Matter, and we go around marching about police brutalities, but Black education matters, because where a life gets lost on the street because of police brutality, we're losing a whole generation because of the education gap that's happening. So either we lose a whole generation or we get out and we fight for the kids that's coming up to make sure that they can have better lives coming up the road. All right.
Wow.
That's
good, man.
Man Talk Monday.
Wow.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Wow.
Your cute self. Dr. Smith, for joining us.
Hey,
good job, man. That's a good job, man. That's a good job, pal. That's a good job, guys.
Every Monday, 7 o'clock is what we do. So we'll see y'all next Monday.